Hi everyone, my name is Ansh. Today in this video I'll be talking about a GM counter or a Geiger-Müller counter. So what I'll cover in this video are these points. So I'll cover the basic working mechanism of a Geiger-Müller detector. Um, yeah, so I'll cover the basic working mechanisms of a Geiger-Müller detector. I'll explain what dead time is in a Geiger-Müller detector, and I'll also derive the expression for dead time of the Geiger-Müller detector. So first, let's start with the working and the construction of a Geiger-Müller detector. So a Geiger-Müller detector is essentially a cylindrical tube that you can see right here. The tube is usually made up of plastic with this anode in the middle. The anode is usually made out of tungsten, and there is inert gas filled inside the cylinder. And The gas is usually filled at low pressures. And how and then the anode right here is connected to a high positive voltage, while the tube itself is grounded. Okay. So this is a construction of the Geiger-Müller tube, and then now I'll explain how it is used to detect radiation. So what happens is you have some form of ionizing radiation come in. This ionizing radiation is coming in and it interacts with the tube, or interacts with the atoms inside the tube. So what happens is that ionizing radiation comes in. Now I would like to note that the ionizing radiation could be of any kind. It could be alpha radiation, beta radiation, or gamma radiation. The only requirement is that it has to ionize the atom, or ionize the electron. Sorry. So what happens is you have incoming energy in the form of radiation. It interacts with the outermost electrons in this atom. It knocks this electron out of its shell. This electron will then go and interact with an electron of other atom, and this electron will go and interact with other electron, and eventually you will have a sort of avalanching effect where a single source of ionizing radiation leads to a lot of free electrons ejected from their respective ions. So you can see here that the ionizing radiation interacts with one electron right here, which is the red dot, and then it leads to a sort of avalanching, which is a creation of multiple free electrons inside the tube. Now, these free electrons, since they are negatively charged and the anode right here is positively charged, they'll be attracted towards the anode. And as we know, movement of free electrons is it gives rise to current. So we measure this current and then we use this current to relate how much radiation we have incoming. And a characteristic of the Geiger-Müller tube is that we get outputs in sort of these step functions, if you like to call it that. So uh, this is how one single ionizing radiation source gives rise to one output right here. Then you have another source, you'll get another output. So this is how the Geiger-Müller detector works. Now I'll explain how dead time comes in this. So, uh, what happens is let's say you have one ray of ionizing radiation coming in. All these electrons separate from their ions, and then they become free, and then they are attracted towards the anode, and we get current. Now, the problem is that the ions in that are inside the tube right now don't have electrons that can be ejected, since the free electrons that could be ejected have already been ejected by one single source of ionizing radiation. So there's a sort of dead time, they like to call it, where the electrons in the system recombine with the atoms, and that is the only way that they can be ionized again. Otherwise, you cannot ionize a free electron. You can only ionize a bound electron. So there's a sort of dead time that you have to wait before all the free electrons combine again with the atoms, and only then they can be ionized again by another source of ionizing radiation. So this gives rise to dead time. So you can think of it schematically in this way. You can see this plot right here. On the y-axis, we have counts, and counts is the general unit in which radiation is measured. So it's measured in CPS, which is counts per second. So let's say you have one incoming ray of ionizing radiation. you get one output which corresponds to one count, let's say. And then there'll be a sort of dead time right here where the electrons will be recombining with their ions. And so in this duration, even if there was another source of ionizing radiation, it wouldn't affect our detector because our electrons are already free and they cannot, they have to become bound again before they can be ionized. So there's a sort of dead time where the detector does not detect counts, and then there's a second count, let's say, and then there's more dead time right here. So when we are actually measuring radiation from an incoming source, we have to account for this dead time, because it's entirely possible that we have some other we have another count of radiation coming in that we have to account for. So we have to calculate the dead time of a GM counter to compensate for it. So uh, now that we have understood what dead time is, we'll go on to quantizing this dead time. And first, we'll start with labeling these times that we just discussed. So, uh, right. So the first term that the first variable that we are defining is capital T, which is the dead time, which is this term right here. This is capital T, the dead time. Then we have real time. The real time is which the real time is the time for which our detector stays on. So you can see in this example we have two counts coming in. So our detector turns on somewhere around here and it turns off somewhere around here. So right here, this entire duration is what we call the real time, and it is the time for which our detector stays on. Then we have TL, which is the lifetime. So the lifetime is the time for which the detector is actually measuring counts. So you take the total time, this measurement right here, for which our detector is staying on, and then you subtract the dead time from it, where our detector is not measuring any counts. So what are you left with? You are left with the duration of these green bars right here. These green bars, the duration of these green bars is what is called the lifetime. And you can think of it as the time for which our detector is actually measuring the count, since for the rest of the time it's sort of dead. So this is the lifetime, that is the sum of the duration of these green bars. Then you have C, which is the total counts recorded. So for this example, we have two recorded counts corresponding to these two green bars, and that is C, the total counts recorded. Then we have two measuring rates. We have two counting rates. Excuse me. We have small n, which is a measured counting rate, and small n is equal to C, the number of counts recorded upon the real time. So in this case, it is two counts upon the real time. The real time is this entire bar right here. So that is the measured counting rate, and this is what we measure in an experiment. We measure the measured counting rate, and then we have the true counting rate, which is capital N, which is equal to the number of counts upon the lifetime. So that is two counts upon the lifetime. So that is two counts upon the sum of the duration of these two green bars right here. So in an experiment, we know small n, and we want to take into account dead time, and we want to compensate for the dead time. So we can assume that there's some sort of count coming in right here and right here, which we know that our source is emitting, but our detector won't detect since it's dead in that time range. So we want to compensate for that. So now I'll continue. We'll establish some relations between these variables, and then we'll go on calculating the dead time. So okay, so to start with this derivation, we'll start with an observation I made during the definition of these variables. We have that lifetime, which is the sum of the duration of these green bars right here. The lifetime is equal to the real time, the entire time duration right here, minus the dead time, which is the black bars right here. So you take the total time, you subtract the black bars right here, and you get the sum of the duration of these green bars. So that is how we start. And so we have light time is equal to real time minus dead time. We substitute for these terms. So we have TL is equal to TR minus CT. So what do we say the dead time is? So in this case right here, you can see that we have two counts, and corresponding to two counts, we have two dead times, or two times capital T, since two counts, so 2t dead time. So if we have c number of counts, we will have a dead time duration of ct, right? So now we'll rearrange this a little bit. We'll divide everywhere by tr. So we get TL by tr is equal to 1 minus ct by tr. We'll make a substitution right here. Excuse me, we take this term right here and we substitute it here. Sorry, let me draw this a little more neatly. We take this term right here and we substitute it here. So we have that c upon tr is equal to small n. So let's substitute for that. We have TL upon TR is equal to 1 minus NT. Right. So now that we have made this substitution, we'll have to use one more relation. So write it in the sorry. I'll write it in the corner right here. We make use of these two terms, and then we we note that small n upon capital N. You know what? Let me write this a little on the side here. So we have small n upon capital N. So we divide these two equations. So we have small n upon capital N is equal to C upon TR upon C upon TL. Now the C's cancel out. So this and this cancels out, and we are left with TL upon TR. So we'll use this relation right here. We observe that we have TL upon TR right here, and we know that TL upon TR is equal to small n upon capital N. So we'll substitute that, and we have small n upon capital N is equal to 1 minus NT. And then we rearrange this. We take the capital N on top here in the numerator, and we are left with small n upon 1 minus small n t is equal to capital N. So we'll mark this relation. We'll be using it later. 1. Now, okay, so since we have this relation now, so when we are actually experimentally determining the dead time, we actually use two sources instead of one. And I like to think of this as a sort of calibration, and it'll become more clear with the mathematics why we do that. So when we have two sources, we'll use the subscript 1 and 2 for source number 1 and source number 2. So say you have the first source, our detector is placed near the first source, and it detects count. It measures the so it measures small n, which is a measured counting rate, and then we'll remember that small n is the measured counting rate and capital N is the true counting rate. So first it measures small n for the first source, and then we assume a capital N1, the true counting rate for the source 1. This is for source 1. And then similarly for source 2, we have capital N2, which is what we measured when our detector is placed near source 2, and we assume N2. Note that we don't have to know N1 and N2. It will essentially cut out during the derivation. We measure N1, small n1 and small n2, which is what we need actually. And then we have in the third scenario, so first scenario was only source 1 near the detector. Second scenario was source 2 near the detector. Third scenario is we have source 1 and source 2 placed near the detector. So we'll measure n12 number of counts and n1. So n12 is our measured counting rate, and capital N12 is our true counting rate, and we'll measure this again in the experiment. So now we want to see if we can form a sort of relation between these three variables. Intuitively, we assume that we'll have some sort of relation. We have this sort of relation. We have two possible relations we can explore. So we have this, is this true or not? And then we have this. Intuitively, we can say if when one source is present, we have n1 counting rate. When the second source is present, we have n2 counting rate. So when both the sources are present, we should have n12 counting rate. But we don't know which counting rate we should take for now. So we have these two possible equations to choose from. Now, I'll first disapprove of the first relation and why that is not true. So So as mentioned earlier, N1 and N2 are the counting rates for when the first source is present and then when the second source is present. So we'll go to the graph here. Now let's say we have these green bars correspond to the um, correspond to the first source. So let's say the first source give off a count. There's a dead time right here. Then the first source give off another count, and then there's again dead time right here. Now, when you have both of these sources placed together, what will happen is, say N2 is giving off a count right here and then one right here. Now, we know that since the first source has already given off a count, our detector is dead in this duration and it won't be able to take any more counts. So it won't be able to detect this it won't be able to detect this count coming from the second source. So we'll be missing these counts when both the sources are present at the same time. And so we cannot really use use the first relation right here, because uh, the dead time will not let both the sources have the, sorry, let me rephrase this. The sum of the measured counting rates won't add up directly since we'll have dead times coming in. Now, so we'll explore the second relation, which is that is capital N1 plus capital N2 equals to capital N12. Now, capital N has a characteristic that it's independent of dead time. Uh, and we know that because it only depends on the number of counts. So let's say you have two counts right here, and then again we'll draw this right here and then this right here. So the capital N only depends on the counts. So two counts for the first source and two counts for the second source upon the live time, which is the duration of these green bars and these blue bars right here. So it has nothing to do with dead time in any. There's no relation with dead time. So it won't matter if we have one source or two source. We can always say that capital N1 plus capital N2 will give us capital N12. So we select this relation and then we proceed again with the calculation. So we'll use a relation we derived right here, which is equation one. I'll write it again right here. So we have that capital N is equal to small n upon 1 minus small n t. Right. So now we'll substitute the variables for all these. We'll substitute for capital N for all these three terms. So instead of capital N1, we'll write small n1 upon 1 minus small n1 t from this relation right here. We'll write capital N2 upon 1 minus n2 t, and then we'll write capital small n12, sorry, upon 1 minus small n12 t. And now we want to solve this equation for capital T. You should note that in this equation or relation, we have all experimentally measurable values. So small n1, small n2, and small n12 are all experimentally measurable. So we don't have to make any assumptions. We just have to do three experiments and we have to solve this equation. So I won't go into how to solve this equation, but we know that this equation can be solved for capital T and we'll get this answer. So capital T will be equal to N1 plus N2 minus small n12 upon, sorry, 2 N1, 2 N1 N2. So this is our derivation of the dead time. So we have capital T is equal to N1 plus N2 minus N12 upon 2 N1 N2. As I mentioned, these are all experimentally measurable values. So all we have to do is we calculate the counting rate when the first source is present. We measure the counting rate when the second source is present. We measure the counting rate when both sources are present. And then we substitute all these three values and we'll be able to determine the dead time of our detector. And that is how we determine how our dead time is, and there are then different ways to compensate for this dead time in our detector. Yeah, so that is all in for this that is all I'm going to cover in this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. If you have any suggestions, also leave them in the comments down below. If you liked my explanation, give this video a like, and yeah, thank you for listening.